Hello and welcome. I'm Sima Katauka and you're watching the World Report on News X World. Let's take a look at the top headlines of this hour. Thailand launches airstrikes on Cambodian positions after a Thai soldier is killed, with Cambodia reporting 4 civilians have died and thousands fleeing the border areas. Both sides trade blame for the heaviest clashes since July's ceasefire, as Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar warns the violence could unravel regional stability. Ukraine's President Zelensky meets UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer, France's Macron and Germany's Merz in London to review a new US-Ukraine peace plan drafted in Florida. Trump has said that Zelensky has not read the proposal yet, as Western unity strains, and Kyiv warns its survival depends on these negotiations. At least 7 people are injured after a Russian drone strike an apartment block in Ukraine's Sumy region, with 2 victims hospitalized. The border region faces near daily attacks as the war approaches its 4th year. Syrians celebrate the first anniversary of Bashar al-Assad's overthrow with events in Damascus, Umayyad Square and military parades nationwide. Even as the country struggles to recover from years of war, celebrations come amid ongoing instability and a fractured landscape 1 year after Assad fled to Russia. Nigerian authorities secured the release of 100 abducted students from St. Mary's Catholic School in Papiri, with handover expected on Monday. The presidency confirms their freedom, but the status of another 165 students and staff remains unknown. President Trump's new global security roadmap omits any target of denuclearization. North Korea breaking with 2 decades of U.S. policy, the shift sparks speculation that Washington is positioning for a diplomatic breakthrough with Pyongyang in 2026. A South Korean woman is sentenced to 4 years in prison for extorting national team captain Son Heung-min by falsely claiming she was pregnant with his child. Prosecutors say she took 300 million won for her silence and then tried to demand another 70 million. Iran has said that a European-based dual national arrested during the 12-day war with Israel has been sent to trial on charges of espionage for the Zionist regime. Officials have not named the defendant, but allegedly he conducted intelligence cooperation with Israel while in Iran in June. Now we start this hour with Thailand Prime Minister Anutin Charnvirakul has said that his country never wants to see violence after fresh clashes broke out with neighboring Cambodia, but noted that the government would not stand any violation of its sovereignty. Let's have a look at what the Thai Prime Minister has shared.
รัฐบาลขอยืนยันว่าประเทศไทยจะดำรงความมุ่งมั่นสูงสุดในการปกป้องอธิปไตยและบูรณภาพแห่งดินแดนของชาติตามหลักกฎหมายระหว่างประเทศและสิทธิในการป้องกันตนเองโดยชอบธรรมและในวันนี้ได้มีการประชุมสภาความมั่นคงแห่งชาติโดยมีมติยืนยันว่ารัฐบาลจะดำเนินการตามมติสภาความมั่นคงแห่งชาติก็คือจะมีการปฏิบัติการทางทหารในทุกกรณีตามเงื่อนไขของสถานการณ์ที่เกิดขึ้นและให้มีการปฏิบัติการทางทหารในเรื่องอื่นๆที่มีความจำเป็นประเทศไทยไม่เคยต้องการเห็นความรุนแรงโดยยืนยันว่าประเทศไทยไม่เคยเป็นฝ่ายริเริ่มหรือรุกรานแต่อย่างใดแต่ประเทศไทยจะไม่ยอมให้มีการล่วงละเมิดอธิปไตยและจะดำเนินการอย่างมีเหตุมีผลรอบคอบยึดหลักสันติภาพความมั่นคงและมนุษยธรรมเป็นสำคัญ
Thailand claims that it has launched airstrikes into Cambodia as fighting broke out in multiple areas along their disputed border, after both countries accused the other of breaching a ceasefire brokered by U.S. President Donald Trump. According to the Thai army spokesperson, at least one Thai soldier has been killed and 8 others wounded in the fresh clashes that has intensified at around 22 GMT. Meanwhile, Cambodia's ex-Prime Minister Hun Sen has accused Thailand of being the aggressor and trying to provoke Cambodia. He has also urged the Cambodian forces to exercise restraint. Now for this discussion, we welcome Dr. Satoru Nagao. He's a fellow at Hudson Institute, joins us live from Tokyo. Thank you very much, Dr. Satoru, for joining us again. Good to see you. Now, looking at this as escalations, as the situation escalates between Cambodia and Thailand, how can these two countries manage their border disputes, long disputed border disputes, to prevent escalation while maintaining their national sovereignty?
Indeed, both Thailand and Cambodia maintaining status quo is interesting in this case because, of course, this is territorial issue. Both sides want to claim, but at the same time, these territories, indeed, because of the World Heritage, there's a possibility some income they can get, but that is income. Very limited incomes they are seeking. So that's why if they forge a big war, this is not a cost-effective way. They waste huge money. So that's why, indeed, in this case, maintaining a ceasefire is relatively easy compared with the other big war, a big conflict, I think. But at the same time, they killed each other. This kind of emotional situation has already happened. And in this case, just give up is not the option for both sides. And in this case, a little interesting is there is a big military capability gap between two countries. Thailand has a huge sophisticated armed forces, especially they have the sophisticated air force. In case of Cambodia, Cambodia do not have the air force itself, and their anti-air weapon is also limited. So that's why if the air strike has happened from Thailand side, indeed this is one-side game. So that's why Thai can bomb the Cambodia. Cambodia cannot repel this air strike. So that's why if the Thailand has the will to stop this bombing, of course it is easy to achieve the ceasefire. In this case, Thailand has initiative, and so that's why now the Thailand says that there is no political will to continue the big battle. So that's why the ceasefire will happen, I think. Restart again. But because of the maintain a ceasefire is important thing, and emotional problem is still exists. So that's why sometimes sporadic fighting could happen. But ceasefire is maybe it is a long-term course they are working, I think.
Yes, and you know, this year's last during last mediations efforts between these two countries, we didn't see much coming out of ASEAN nations. Do you think what role can external mediators such as the ASEAN nations play in enforcing ceasefire agreements? Even maybe Malaysia can play in between Thailand and Cambodia.
Malaysia has already set up the stage of the negotiation between two as a host country of the ASEAN this year. And but pressure from the President Trump is also the effective power for both sides to sit in the chair of the negotiation table. So that's why it has happened. So because of the combination of the ASEAN's involvement and the U.S. pressure, that's why it is maybe nearly the good enough condition for both sides to agree the ceasefire. But at the same time, if this condition will change by some other factor, of course, there is a possibility they will fight again. And at least sporadic fighting could happen, not only now but also the future. So that's why there's possibilities. Maintenance effort of the ceasefire is very important, and without this, some sporadic fighting could be a little bit escalated one between two countries. And for ASEAN, this is very important and serious issue because if the country cannot integrate their effort, ASEAN is meaningless. So that's why the value of the ASEAN rely on how to maintain peaceful situation or how to coordinate their effort. And that is needed. So that's why this issue is indeed a very important issue for ASEAN, I think.
Yes, indeed. Thank you for highlighting that. With that, I would like to thank Dr. Satoru Nagao for sharing that insight. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our later discussion. Now, moving forward to Europe, France is pushing back against calls to use frozen Russian assets held in its private banks to support a new reparations loan for Ukraine. According to the reports, Paris argues that private credit institutions operate under different contractual rules than Belgium's Euroclear, which holds most of Russia's sovereign assets. Reports say that French banks are refusing to take part in talks over transferring Russian private assets to Kyiv. They currently hold about $19.4 billion, the second largest amount in Europe. Belgium follows with roughly $7.6 billion in private accounts. Across Europe, around $227 billion in Russian sovereign assets remain frozen, with $200 billion held at Euroclear. The location of the remaining $27 billion has not been officially disclosed. Now for this discussion, we welcome Ms. Shruti Das Gupta. She's an international affairs expert, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Ms. Shruti, for joining us again. Good to see you. Now, looking at this once again, how aligned are European nations at this moment, and how does France's refusal to use these private Russian assets for Ukraine, are we seeing another disagreement even among the coalition of the willing?
Well, there is obviously going to be a larger dissent occurring on December 18th when these European Council will sit down and discuss whether they can take on the risk of taking on Russia as a giant against themselves. It's right now they want to play the David versus Goliath ideology in the Ukraine-Russia war, but taking on freezing an asset as part of sanctions, which is globally acceptable. Using those frozen assets to propel your enemy is something which is unethical, and EU needs the consent of each member to actually go forth with this plan. So this plan is twofold. One of them is that they say that we will use the Russian assets to pull for it, and the other one is that we will use our own funds. But to have the Russian assets, it has to be unanimous, and Belgium is already digging its heel in because it fears Russian repercussions because it has the largest repository of frozen accounts. And it is, they are very worried that of the repercussions that are going to come through. What they want is for the security to be promised to them in the name of one, that the Russian sanctions, I think they end at around 2027 as of now, and they want the guarantees that EU is willing to provide for opening up those assets to go beyond 2027. Now, France, of course, the private entities cannot be pushed into taking on public or state level risks because they are not protected by the same laws as state banks. So in the case of France, they are having facing dissent or facing private money lenders are unable to secure their own resources against this kind of takeover by EU and its ideology. So in case of both France and Belgium, we are seeing that there is a larger pushback because there are no security guarantees and there are no military guarantees of ensuring that once such a step is taken, Russia and Kremlin is not going to come down crumbling on their plans. Putin on his side has already claimed that if you do this time, it is going to be a declaration of war, and Russia is not scared of taking on the entire EU all by itself. So there is a larger military conflict that has been put on this particular use of frozen assets and the way it has been proposed. So by default, I think by the 18th of December, you will find that there will not be a unanimous vote for using frozen Russian assets, and they will have to put in their own budgetary funds as a loan to Ukraine to do whatever they want to promise to do. Part of this loan is already going to reservice the loan issued in 2024. So basically, EU is funding its own loans and they're just like recycling it, and the loan doesn't ever end. And it all hinges on the fact that Russia may lose and will have to pay reparations. They do not even consider the fact that Russia might win, and then there will be no reparations, and then this money is going to be something very difficult to find in all the fog of war.
And why do you think, Shruti, why do you think they're not considering that Russia might win? Why do you, and also if this were to happen, and then of course, like you mentioned, Russia is not scared to face entire Europe on its own, and then of course then it's going to lead to a bigger war. Maybe it will include other nations, not just Europe and Russia anymore. Why do you think it's such a critical moment, but why do you think other countries in Asia or other countries are not alert or not stopping for this to move forward?
See, why I think they feel that they have supremacy, because one, they have the backing of USA, and they still feel that USA versus Russia will always end up showing Russia in poor light because it's already fatigued with the 4-year war. One is that. The second is they believe they have the colonial mindset from World War I era, where they feel that we will win against Russia. Russia needs us. We don't need Russia. They do not realize that Russia is a nation which is vast in resources and land mass as well as population. And it is also popular with both India and China, the two rising axes in the East. So they are not taking all of this into consideration. Their own sense of superiority makes them believe that they have the moral high ground in this entire conflict, not realizing that their actions is what led to the confrontation right from the beginning of takeover of Crimea. So they're unable to acknowledge their faults and move forward, and they are stuck in the cycle of reaffirming their own false ideology by pushing more loans, pushing more money, pushing more conflict onto this entire European continent. The other nations do not want to get their fingers into this war until it does turns into a transatlantic war where bigger powers come into play, where then everybody is going to have to choose a side, and that's going to lead to a World War III scenario. So that is why everybody who is not directly affected by this war is trying to keep their fingers out of it, because anybody showing any particular preference would make it seem as if it is a larger scale war than right now just between two nations, Russia and Ukraine. Even EU itself is using the land of Ukraine for war rather than engage with Russia on multiple borders, because if they do that, that will turn this war from a two-nation conflict into a continental conflict. So they're trying to keep the hostilities and the conflict contained into a small zone of Ukraine. Ukrainians are already paying the price in terms of destroyed land, infrastructure, life loss. Their economy is absolutely going to collapse by the time this war is over, no matter who is declared the winner and how the peace treaty is signed, because so much money has been pumped into this war, but on the basis that Ukraine will pay it off at a later date. How? Nobody knows. It's just an assumption. They have assumed that Russia will have to lose so that they can win the money back. The other consequence they cannot even put forth, because it will ensure that the false sense of superiority against Russia that they have been living in is not going to actually be the reality on ground. And that is a reality EU is not willing to face as of now.
100%. Thank you for sharing that very enlightening perspective, and always great learning from you. That was Shruti Dasgupta. She joined us from New Delhi. Thank you very much. Now we move the focus back to Asia. Taiwanese citizens have said that self-reliance remains essential, even as U.S. President Donald Trump unveils a new national security strategy aimed at preventing conflict with China over Taiwan in the South China Sea. The document, released on Friday, states that deterring a conflict over Taiwan, ideally by preserving U.S. military overreach, is a key priority. 25-year-old Alan Chen, who recently completed military service, has said that he was glad to see Washington voicing support for maintaining peace across the Taiwan Strait, but others like 35-year-old administration manager Huang Junji has stressed the need for Taiwan to bolster its own defenses, saying Taiwan must be ready to protect itself regardless of whether outside help arrives. Let's listen into what the people have shared.
所以我觉得台湾必须还是得要刚强自己，就是我们必须还是要拿出我们自己保卫，无论有没有人来帮助我们，但是我们首要其冲是应该要先有足当的战力跟国家的防卫力，先保护自己。
Now for this discussion, we welcome Dr. Satoru Nagao. He's a fellow at Hudson Institute, joins us live from Tokyo. Thank you very much, Dr. Satoru, for joining us again. Good to see you. Now, looking at this, how might the U.S.'s emphasis on military overmatch, how do you think this is going to shape Taiwan's own defense planning moving forward?
Self-reliance is very important because, of course, the U.S. National security strategy do not wish the conflict with China. But this is just common sense because no one wants to promote China's invasion to Taiwan except China. So that's why it is natural if U.S. say like that. But U.S. national security strategy also mentioned China is a serious competitor, most important rival. And so they try to defeat China in the competition. So in this case, self-reliance is most important. And especially the semiconductor-related issue, Taiwan is the main supplier if we count advanced level semiconductor. But in this case, of course, not only Taiwan, but also US, Japan, the Philippines, or Australia, or this country coordinated to deter China's invasion of Taiwan. And the supply chain of the weapon of these countries matter, especially US is matter. In 2023 data, in this case, supply of the weapon parts is indeed 25% of the weapon parts of the U.S. Air Force came from China. And so this means that to fight China, the U.S. needs a supply chain from China. That is ironical fact. In this case, when we check the supply chain of the others for the United States, in this case, British, Taiwan, Japan, the South Korea are the supplier for the U.S. Weapon of the U.S. Air Force. But in this case, 25% came from China is only the weapon parts came from the country which do not ally with the United States. So that's why, in this case, this is the weak point of the supply chain of the U.S. Air Force. And so that's why they need to solve this as a priority issue. And in the national security strategy of the U.S., focusing on these two. So Taiwan says self-reliance is still seriously important. That is natural. And because Taiwan supplies advanced level semiconductor to the United States, and to defend Taiwan, of course, the U.S. military force is needed. And the U.S. military forces rely on supply chain from China. So this means that not only for the United States, but also the Taiwanese, the self-reliance is a very important issue, especially for the high-tech weapons, especially for the national security. So that is natural, and it is true, I think.
And once again, how do you think, how will be China eyeing this all, and how could China interpret both Washington's new national security strategy towards Taiwan and Taiwan's push for greater defense capability?
I think the view from China, this national security strategy is not a comfortable document. So that's why they criticize the United States very much. And recently, U.S. eased restriction of the government connection with Taiwan. So that's why it will promote. So view from China, this is quite antagonistic, even if some people mentioned a little bit moderate expression has happened in the U.S. national security strategy. Anyway, the U.S. is preparing to deter China or compete with China and win this competition against China. So that's why it is clear course. So any small change is not affected long-term course. And Taiwan is located in front of the coastal city of China, which is the most important for China. So that's why it looks like the Taiwan is a knife in front of the China's neck. So that's why this is a very serious issue for both US and China. And that's why the self-reliance is important at the same time. View from China, US national security strategy, or Taiwan's existence, or Japan's cooperation, Philippines cooperation, Australia's cooperation, or any cooperation related to Taiwan, all of these are uncomfortable.
Right. With that, I would like to thank Dr. Satoru Nagao for joining us today and sharing that insight throughout our news. Thank you very much. Now we move on to U.S. U.S. President Donald Trump has hosted the annual Kennedy Center Honor Ceremony in Washington yesterday, marking a notable return to one of America's most prestigious cultural events. The evening has celebrated lifetime achievements in music, film, and theater. Opening the ceremony, President Trump has made light-hearted remarks, including jokes aimed at his predecessor, Joe Biden, drawing a mixed reaction from the audience. The event underlined Trump's growing involvement with the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts during his second term. Let's listen in.
This is the greatest evening in the history of the Kennedy Center. Not even a contest. And I'll tell you what, the Kennedy Center, Kennedy Center, I'm sorry. You know, they tried getting Biden to do this 4 years in a row. They tried getting him. He said, I don't think so. Would have been very interesting, though, wouldn't it? I would have watched.
This year's honorees included actor Sylvester Stallone, disco legend Gloria Gaynor, country music icon George Strait, Phantom of the Opera star Michael Crawford, and rock band Kiss. Trump has personally played a role in selecting the award recipients. During his first term, Trump largely stayed away from Kennedy Center events. This time, he has appointed a new board and launched major renovation plans. The ceremony will air on December 23rd. Now we move on to our next news. Senior government officials have said that Indonesia's Sumatra Island will require $3.11 billion in reconstruction and recovery funds following a series of deadly floods. The death toll from the cyclone-induced floods and landslides have reached 950 people as of Monday today, with 274 people still missing as per the reports. The storms also killed about 200 people in southern Thailand and Malaysia. Head of Indonesia's disaster mitigation industry has said that recovery funds will be needed across the three provinces of Aceh, North Sumatra, and West Sumatra. Reports suggest that the reconstruction process will soon begin in some areas in North Sumatra and West Sumatra, which have recovered relatively well. That's all we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.